If all alternative sites do cost more and governments decide to proceed with the proposed urban location because of that cost differential, then the cost trade-off can be precisely measured. Governments would be deciding that avoiding the possible additional financial cost to the LNG operator, in this case Hess, and/or consumers of a more secure location, which would be offshore, is more important public policy than avoiding the additional risk of a catastrophic attack involving mass trauma and burn injuries, which does accompany a decision to permit an urban LNG facility. I won't quote any further as this is on the record. I would like to make three quick statements, a few. These boats will pass through Rhode Island waters. They aren't going to be bringing us economy. The workers that are these 150 to 200 temporary jobs, if they're in the region, some will be Rhode Island, some will be Massachusetts. The number that we'll lose from tankers going up and down the bay will be a lot more significant. We get 182,000 anglers here a year, half from out of state. We shouldn't be so egocentric as to think that they're going to come here regardless. They're going to find another place if closings become an issue, things like that. And I think so long as we don't be egocentric and think that they have to come here, then this makes no sense at all. It's ill-advised. One other thing I did want to mention, you talked about federal legislators. Senators Merkley and Wyden of Oregon introduced last week a bill in the U.S. Senate, to return the rights for granting LNG siting back to the states, to overturn the 2005 decision giving it to FERC. It's just being presented. Two of our senators, Whitehouse and Reed, have just signed on to it. The Connecticut senators, the Maryland senators, and the Washington senators are all on board. I think if we could support that, I think that would be a strong, strong message.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lynn. If you would, go ahead and proceed.
My name is Bob Hamill. I'm the Commodore of the Bristol Yacht Club. Thank you, Senator Levesque. I'm representing 350 members, 350 families, and it's about 1,000 members. We use the bay primarily recreationally. We've heard from the safety experts. We've heard from environmentalists. We've heard from tourism people, economic development people. So I want to talk about the recreation. That's primarily how we use the bay. Having the transit lines obscured by the LNG tankers, having the huge offshore, not offshore, but it's called offshore facility in Mount Hope Bay would certainly impact recreational use of the bay. And what we wonder is, what gives a private company the right to take over huge amounts of public property? And that's it.
You know,
Thank you, Senator.
It's funny because I had this thing, and actually one of my favorite things that you do is go to Gray's Ice Cream, have an ice cream right off Bristol Harbor, and sit there and look at all the boats going in and out. And it certainly is enjoyable. Thank you for your testimony, sir. If you would proceed.
My name is Michael Tamulates. I put Kissimmee River Council because I'm a member there, but I'm just representing people and the public in general, not one specific entity. Really, I'm representing my two kids. I'm going to be very short. When my kids were born, we chose to live in Bristol because we knew that we wanted to be on the water, we wanted to sail, we wanted to do all those things, fish, all those things. They're just coming into their own right now. Last year, we went out on our boat outside the Kissimmee River. We live across the street from there. We went outside the river and we saw Spar Island, which we've been to a couple of times, and for the first time, my son said, "Dad, let's go over there and walk around and see the birds and check out the shells and all that." And since we've named it Jackson's Island, that's his name, and so it's now his. Just, I don't know if it needs to be put on a chart somewhere, but just want you all to know. That island is very, very, very close to where this is going to be located, and I just want to say that as a parent, raising kids in a place that we think is just wonderful, that would be a huge detriment to the way we raise our children. I think that's true of a lot of parents, and I'm sorry there weren't more here with their kids. That would have been a nice thing to see. That's really all I had to say, and whatever you said about IDBID and everything else beforehand, except the one guy against it or for it, I would say that I would support any of it and anything we need to do.
When I was growing up, we were naming all the islands in the cove in off Island Park. That's pretty much where I spent my my youth growing up.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, if you could, perhaps you're going to have to slide. Oh, the microphone slide there. Great. Last but not least, sir, if you would proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Levette. My name is Ronald Thomas, and I am a member of the Coalition for Responsible Siting of LNG. I want to emphasize responsible siting. I spent 17 years up in Quincy Shipbuilding where we built 12 of these tankers, LNG tankers. They are very robust vessels. There's no doubt they're more spherical shaped, okay, which is a sphere like an egg, one of the strongest things ever built, okay, structurally. The bad parts are that they've automated them so much, the human element has been trying to take it away from them, and this is why they're having problems controlling these things out in the high seas. In 2 cases off the Cape Cod, they've lost power while underway. In a couple of cases, they've had to go under tow. What happens if this happens on the transit coming up the river? These things are not small, they're gigantic. They have one hell of a wind shear to them, very susceptible to wind shear. Okay, you lose power in this thing here, they're supposedly going to have 4 tractor tugs, 3 with it and 1 spare. I don't care how many tractor tugs you have. You lose power in that thing, you're going to lose control of it. That channel is not wide enough to handle a vessel of this size or this breadth. Okay, you're talking Prudence Island. Okay, the passage from Prudence Island over to the center of that channel. Okay, you have crosswinds there coming up the Sconnet River in the merge of the Mount Hope River. Okay, which there's no telling which way those currents are going to go or the wind. Okay, I've got a chart here which basically is showing that the 3 alternatives which was submitted by Weaver's Cove to FERC in their preliminary filing, okay, there was option A, B, and C. Option C has the most into Rhode Island waters, and yet that's the one they chose to go with. The reason being is because they could keep the 1 mile radius away from the center of this proposed offshore thing, 1 mile away from any residences. Okay, even though it encompasses Spar Island, which we all know Spar Island is a deserted island, but it still encompasses Spar Island, which is in Rhode Island territory. Why wouldn't the state have a right to say what happens on these things? Okay, now by moving from option C to option A, they could have saved themselves 2¼ miles of pipeline, 2 pipelines, because this stuff is going to have 2 24-inch pipes continuously running so you don't have the expansion and contraction. Even though the so-called Invelar steel is still very susceptible to expansion and contraction, and in order, the way to keep these stresses off the joints is to always keep it cold. So they plan on, even if there's no ship tied up, constantly rotating liquefied LNG through those pipes that are running through under the seabed. Okay. Now the other map I'd like to, the other chart rather, like the thing. This here came from as a result of a question from FERC to Weaver's Cove after the filing for the offshore berth. And this here is showing the zones of their heat effect zone on their particular site. Now here, the green line comes within the breakdown lane of Route 79 at the bend. So basically, they're really pushing it to the limit, and yet they're still saying the BTU for the green line is 1,600 feet for 2 hours, 1,600 BTU. Now, as Mike and John explained earlier, this here's unproven science they're even using this here for. I mean, there is no way a person could survive that type of heat in that type of zone. It's literally ludicrous. And the commandant down in Louisiana, when they were talking about putting a Pelican thing offshore, said if there's ever a fire in these things, he instructs all his people, just let it burn. Now what happens if it's burning in between a channel alongside Roger Williams College or something? Because there is no way of putting an LNG fire out reasonably. You can't add water to it, because now you're just going to add more oxygen to the fire and spread it. So water's useless. The only possible thing you can do is foam, but you couldn't produce enough foam to put an LNG tanker out once you get out to a certain point. But, okay, thank you very much for the opportunity to present my testimony.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it. I thank you all for your attendance, for your attention, and for your participation. As I indicated, we are going to continue to take written submissions until March 31st.